Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. It's fantastic to be here with you after a bit of a hiatus. My name is Sonali Wanigapadaige. Our topic of discussion this evening is sexual harassment and how it's impacting the tourism industry in Sri Lanka. We're constantly told of numerous incidents of sexual harassment that take place across Sri Lanka. Women mainly being targeted, but not limited to women as victims. There are also gay and trans people who are targeted, who are victimized as a result of sexual harassment. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel of guests to you. We are joined by Rehan Wijeyaratne Jayavikrama, joining us for the first time on our show. He's the chairman of the Waligama Urban Council, which is a tourism hotspot. Good evening, Rehan.
Good evening, Sonali.
Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
We are also joined by Nabila Yassin. She's a social activist and the founder of Not Your Nangi, which is an online movement to curb, to stand up against harassment. Good evening and welcome to the show, Nabila.
Thank you, Sonali.
Good to have you. We are also joined by Mr. Kishu Gomes. He is the chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
And last but not least, Professor Siri Hettige, Emeritus Professor, University of Colombo. Good to have you again with us. We'll also be joined by our fantastic panel of journalists on tonight's show later on. I will make the introductions. Let me first start off with Mr. Kishu Gomes, who is the chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority. Now, according to the website, we're told that the SLTDA is the government authority tasked with planning, development, regulation and policy implementation of tourism and related industries. Of late, specifically, we've been hearing of numerous incidents where tourists visiting Sri Lanka have been victimized as a result of sexual harassment. Now, last year, that's year 2018, saw about 2.3 million tourists coming into Sri Lanka. On the other hand, we find Lonely Planet saying that Sri Lanka is, right at the top of countries to visit. Do you see a disconnect in this whole picture? If so, what is it?
Yeah, Sonali, thank you for inviting me to be on this show. And it's a very, very timely, topic. I must, admit that. Having said that, I must also confess that I'm being in the job, just for 2 months only. But given that I'm being heavily involved in driving various critical activities, I have a knowledge that's bigger or more than 2 months. The answer to your question is if there is a disconnect or otherwise. I believe, based on all what we know, that incidents happen in every single country where there is tourism. Since I'm being in the job for 2 months only, I do not have comparative statistics to be able to, conclude if Sri Lanka is better than other countries or worse than other countries. But surely, from the tourism development standpoint, we would want an environment within which there will not be any incident, be it sexual harassment or otherwise. There should not be any harassment. Anyone who's coming into Sri Lanka should be warmly welcomed. They should be loved, respected, and we should, create that environment within which they'll be able to achieve what they wish to achieve.
However, the reality is not that.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to sort of explain to you what our vision would be. So I mean, when tourists go back, we would want the tourists, just to talk about one thing. That one thing would be Sri Lanka, being the best destination. So we're marching towards that. Of course, Longley Panat, had that accolade, given to Sri Lanka, which is extremely good, and it's not easy to achieve, that level of recognition, given the fact that tourism is one of the most competitive industries in the world. So it's all good. So we have plans in place in order to try and eliminate all these harassments. And we're working towards that. So we'll talk about, some of those specific activities as we go on. Whether, there is a disconnect. It's good to think that there is a disconnect. And if we believe that there is a disconnect,
so
then
to
obviously
identify the problem, realize that there's a problem, and then fix it.
Then fix it. Yes.
Right. So some of the key agencies that are vested with the task of tourism. We have the Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau, the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, the Sri Lanka Tourism Convention Bureau, and the Ministry of Tourism Development and Christian Religious Affairs, among other main key stakeholders. What is the linkage between all these agencies? Do these agencies work hand in hand? Because sometimes we find that related ministries don't do this.
Okay, so let me explain the structure. We have tourism, development, wildlife and Christian affairs ministry under which tourism comes. So under tourism, wing of the ministry, we have 4 institutions. One is the Tourism Development Authority, which does what you initially explained in terms of planning, developing, and that's the product aspect of tourism.
Sure.
Then we have the Sri Lanka Tourism Promotions Bureau. That's the marketing arm, that markets the product, graduated, nurtured under the Tourism Development Authority across the targeted markets. Then we have what we call the hotel school in our own terminology. So that is to ensure that the tourism industry is fed with the right talent, the labor force with right skills, right attitude, who are passionate about working in the industry, trying to basically, create value for the visitors. And then we have the Conventions Bureau that's basically to market Sri Lanka as a destination for MICE tourism. That's conferences and all the other things that happen in the country. So these 4 organizations used to have 4 chairmen, but this time the government decided to give 2 organizations to me, so that's why I had
Sure.
the Development Authority and the Promotions Bureau. For the Hotel School, there is another chairman, and for the Conventions Bureau, there is another chairman as well. So while it's 4 different entities, we all work together and we come together on a daily basis, and as and when is required for us to come together and look at tourism as a whole and do what is right in order to keep growing the industry.
Now that we've identified the problem, I think there's a huge task before you.
Agreed.
Thank you very much for your opening remarks. I move my attention now to Rehan Vijayratna Jayavikramas, Chairman of the Valigama Urban Council, which is one of the main tourist destinations. As a young and vibrant people's representative, Rehan, how do you view the disconnect between the fact that Sri Lanka is marketed as one of the key tourist destinations and the fact that most of the, well, I need to make this sentence a little politically correct. We have a certain part of our population which is sexually frustrated and harassing tourists and women and trans people and gay people. How do you find this disconnect?
I mean, the most important thing for us to figure out, Sonali, is that this is not a problem that only affects tourists. As long as we
Absolutely.
think that sexual harassment only affects tourists, that's where we go wrong as a country. We need to understand that this is a festering wound that has been prevalent in Sri Lankan society for the longest time. Let it be school, let it be after school, let it be a workplace, let it be a train, let it be a bus. You know, I mean, it's very difficult for me to understand how sexual harassment, when people talk about it, why people don't talk about the core issues. I mean, we really need to fix these core issues. And interestingly enough, when I was invited for this show, it was at a timely moment because Mirissa went through a massive issue where there was a single instance of sexual harassment.
Sure.
And the media, to be honest, didn't play its part. They portrayed it as an incident that happens all the time in Mirissa. And it actually doesn't, because I'm from Weligama. Mirissa is my adjoining Pradeshik Sabha. I'm from the Urban Council. And these issues don't always happen. But when they do, our media takes it out and sensationalizes it. And during this particular issue, I specifically mentioned to the Minister of Tourism that this is not an issue that was just isolated, that this was an issue that was actually isolated, and we should treat it as such. And when you compare the action that was taken just a few years ago, in 2012, when the Tangol Pradeshik Sabha chairman went and murdered that tourist who I think was from the Red Cross, the identification parade only took place in 2014. So you have to understand that the legal system also plays a big role in all this. And also the fact that most women don't know that the section 345 exists in the penal code. I mean, if I asked a lot of my friends before coming to this show whether they knew about such a penal code in existence, and they didn't. So if you just give me a minute to read what section 345 actually is. It says, whoever by assault or criminal force sexually harasses another person, or by the use of words or actions, causes sexual annoyance or harassment to such other person commits the offense of sexual harassment, and shall on conviction be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 5 years, or with a fine, or with both, and may be ordered to pay compensation of an amount determined by court to the person in respect of whom the offense was committed for the injuries caused by such a person. So whoever that says that we don't have a legal system in place to tackle it, this is the section that tackles that particular issue. Now, soon after reading about this particular penal code, the first thing I did was I called the Weligama OIC, the officer in charge of the Weligama police station, because they directly fall under my purview. And I said, how many of these times do we actually use this particular penal code? He said, rarely. So then I asked him, why don't we implement it? If a woman comes and says, or a man or a child or anyone comes and says they were sexually harassed, I asked him why this particular penal code is not used. And he said, no, sometimes it's because the two parties want to settle. But then I kind of figured out that the only way such a settlement could be is if the person or the tourist involved in this issue flees the country. Because someone who gets sexually harassed is definitely not going to come back to a court system and testify in court. They would want to do so while they're abroad. So for that purpose, I would like to request the Minister of Justice, who is also a lady, and who's also quite a versatile lady, to introduce laws that will tackle these problems and tackle sexual harassment, or even maybe introduce a special court. Since we're in the habit of opening up special courts, maybe we should open one just for sexual harassment and just for tourist offenses. And also the fact, Sonali, that as long as I told you before, as long as we treat this problem and make it singled out just for tourists, this is not going to work. We need to understand there's a problem. There's a problem that's happening in our country. This is a problem that, fathers come home drunk and harass, wives. This is a problem about kids being harassed. This is a question about not being able to go in a bus. So as long as we know that this problem exists, we should first tackle that problem, the root of the issue, and then work on the tourism sector, because tourism is just secondary.
Thank you very much, Rehan Jayavikrama, for your opening remarks. My next question is to Nabila Yassin. She's a social activist and the founder of the Not Your Nangi movement. You've been doing some fantastic work, Nabila, through your online platform. It's on Facebook as well as Instagram. 51% of the population feel unsafe to travel alone in the evenings, at night. So many precautionary measures taken to ensure that sexual harassment does not take place in the bus, at the workplace, on the train. The fear is real. How do you view sexual harassment in Sri Lanka juxtaposed with the legal system? We have a fully functional legal system. We have law enforcement agencies which work 24/7. We have a Minister of Justice. We have other government agencies. This is not a problem that has no solution. There are legal provisions in the penal code. So many progressive measures being taken by government, by other stakeholders. Where are we going wrong?
Hi, Sonali. Thank you so much for having me here with you today. You're completely right about how the fear is real, because it really affects our quality of life. I mean, as a young woman, I completely find it absurd that I have to take expensive measures of transport in order to avoid harassment. When it comes to Ubers, I have to try, if it's at night, I have to try to take the most exclusive sort of transport, because I'm under the presumption that maybe exclusivity would mean my chances of being harassed being minimal, as in there is that doubt as well. It's not as though if I use an UberX, I won't be harassed, but it's about my chance. So as an individual who is also a victim and a potential victim to potential harassment in the future, in the coming future, like you and I could relate most to this evening. That,
absolutely.
Tomorrow morning you could be walking on the street at 6 o'clock at the crack of dawn, and you might find somebody just lifting his sarong to flash you. But my question is, with so many frequent incidences, would you and I find it comfortable to go through that rigorous and that tiring process of attaining justice? We've also seen cases where women have reported, but has justice been given? No, it's so lengthy. It's about the enforcement, especially. Natyo Nangi, as you would know, speaks out for speaking up against sexual violence by asking victims to tell their stories. And one of the stories that really left me impacted with regards to the enforcement authorities was this particular story about a school-going student, a student, who was being harassed by a bunch of boys. So it was her and a friend who were walking on the main road, and some boys from a nearby school tried to reach up their skirts. So they tried to seek help from a policeman who was in the vicinity, and they approached him, told him what the problem was, and instead of making eye contact, the policeman's gaze was on their chests. So as students, they understand that, or rather they have this natural presumption later on that they can't, or they won't go and report their problems, because they'll definitely, or rather they would assume that they would be under similar situations. And we also have conversations in our little girl groups or even on social media where we speak about our negative experiences with law enforcement authorities, from cops to even the higher authorities, where they just dismiss your case as though it doesn't mean anything, as though it's the most trivial thing. So with this, with I'd say the frequent incidents of negative experiences, individuals and girls and women don't find it comfortable to really go seek out justice. They'd rather put up a post on social media than actually go and approach the authorities, because there is no faith in the system. Maybe the system works right, but it doesn't work right always. And we've got enough of experiences to really prove this.
All right, thank you very much, Nabila, for your opening remarks. Professor Siri Hettige, Emeritus Professor, University of Colombo, my question to you is, the police necessarily play a pivotal role in curbing crime, including sexual harassment. How far do we have to go in sensitizing the police force of Sri Lanka towards accepting complaints of this nature, towards proactively arresting sexual predators, it's not seen as a priority. It's often seen as a very normalized thing. Sexual harassment in the bus, on a train. You know, if we go by bus, we try not to fall asleep, so that lest we get harassed. So that is the norm. I mean, you can't exactly point a finger at the entire police force as a whole. How do you view this, and how further down do we have to go to sensitize the police?
Certainly, this is a major public order issue, and therefore there is certainly a very important role that the law enforcement authorities, in particular police officers, have to play. But on the other hand, this is not just a public order issue. It is a social issue which is entrenched in Sri Lankan society, and as the first commentator mentioned, it is very much related to, you know, the wider social context, where we don't really take sexual harassment seriously. And since it is not confined to law and order sector alone, since it is very much rooted in, you know, our you know, social life, if you like, you know, at a family level, at an institutional level, and you know, and at a, you know, in the public sphere, and also of course in various other, you know, areas. So we probably have to look at it from a broader perspective, not just from a law and order perspective alone. For instance, I know I have been, you know, within the university system for a number of decades, and we have seen how sexual harassment has not been taken very seriously, you know, and we have really not dealt with, you know, sexual harassment issues involving not only you know, students, but also even you know, other colleagues, you know, if you like. So the point is that in Sri Lanka, well, I mean, I'm sure there are many other places where you have similar issues. Like, I mean, our neighboring country, India. I mean, we hear
Absolutely.
all kinds of you know,
Horror
incidents
stories.
happening
Yeah.
and being dealt with, and so on and so forth. So probably we need to have a serious public discourse on this issue in this country, instead of glossing over, instead of you know, basically taking it lightly. I think we'll have to certainly pay, you know, greater attention and figure out how we could, you know, address this issue from different angles. And certainly, you know, this is also connected to civility. You know, how you treat a stranger, you know, whether it's a man or woman or, you know, child or adult or whatever. So the point is that, you know, we have a very low level of civility in this country, and we don't really respect each other. And you can, you know, look at the language that is being used, even in social media. I mean, they don't realize that they are in a public, you know, domain, and that they have to maintain certain degree of civility. I don't think that it is true. So what I feel is that while we certainly have to rely on, you know, law enforcement authority to, you know, basically use the legal provisions that are available, and also to be vigilant and be proactive rather than, you know, reacting to incidents that are reported, while at the same time, you know, explore other possibilities at various, you know, levels to intervene and address this issue. For instance, at an institutional level, a great deal can be done. I mean, workplace, you know, sexual harassment is quite common in this country, and as much as it is true in public transport and so on. So I think we have a much bigger social issue here rather than a law and order issue alone.
From a sociological point of view, Professor, if you take a bully, a school bully, if you look into his background, you find that he is either being bullied at home or he comes from a broken family, something like that. Similarly, it's the abused who tend to grow up to be abusers.
Well,
In terms of sexual harassment, again, the predators' mental health aspect needs to be looked into. And before young adolescents become sexual predators, we need to have a system in place in this country to arrest it. And I feel that we can do this to a great extent through education reforms. If we have comprehensive sexuality education in schools, which is not being done, where teachers don't really, teach comprehensive. We don't have comprehensive sexuality education. We have sex ed, but it's not properly taught because the teachers aren't trained to teach it. So it's a huge sort of mess there.
Well, certainly I already mentioned the importance of the institutions. For instance, school as an institution is not just a place where you impart education. It is a place where you also address interpersonal issues, group issues, and also address highly personalized problems that kids bring into the school setting. I don't think that we are really looking at the school from that kind of perspective. We are just looking at school as a place where the kids go and learn something and then they pass their exams and leave. I think that instrumental attitude towards education, I think, has really made the situation worse, because we don't see a wider role for the school, wider role for the teachers, and so on and so forth. And I think we are really not introduced systems into the school as an institution to address some of these issues. For instance, counseling service is almost non-existent. We know that there are kids, coming from difficult backgrounds, broken families, and also having had, very, very harrowing experiences as children. And I don't think that we are really singling these people out and really helping them to cope with, the situation and overcome the problem that I think this is really what we find not only in the school system, also in the other institutions of higher learning. And we can see the degree of tolerance is very high when it comes to, deviant behavior or, delinquent
Absolutely.
behavior and so on and so forth. I observe these things already, in Colombo, when I go around, when the school kids come out, for instance. We could see how they behave, sometimes, at bus halls and so on and so forth, and displaying, some of these very, very, bizarre kind of behaviors. They really do not display the degree of civility that you expect them, given the names of their schools, for instance. They are reputed schools, but then the kids come out, we don't really see the high level of civility that we expect from kids who attend some of these very prestigious schools. So therefore, this is a pervasive problem. I don't see it as a problem that affects, a few tourists here and there. And actually, I don't think that there are hundreds of cases, but there are, few cases. Some are really serious, and those have to be addressed. And I think we have to really get the law enforcement agencies to play a proactive role rather than a reactive one, if you like. But at the same time, I think we have, other, groups who should really take responsibility for some of these things. Certainly, school teachers can't, shirk their responsibility, within the school situation. And then, of course, the other institutions, like, as I already mentioned, the workplace, harassment, I think is a major problem.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor, for your perspectives. I'd like to open the floor for questions from our journalists. We're joined by Nadeem Majid and Shehan Ranatunga. Good evening, guys.
Good evening.
Let's start off with Shehan.
If I can first speak to Mr. Kishu Gomez. Mr. Gomez, recently you were quoted as saying that tourism is number 3 in terms of revenue, you said, in the country, but there is potential of becoming number 1 very soon. Is it fair to say that this issue of sexual harassment is one of the most significant obstructions to achieving number 1 status? Where do you rank this problem of sexual harassment and tourism in Sri Lanka?
In terms of sexual harassment, as key stakeholders, we would like to create an environment within which there will not be a single incident. As to how it affects the development of the industry, obviously, it's not the incident, but bad publicity that you receive around that incident is bad enough. So obviously, in terms of achieving our goal of becoming Sri Lanka's number 1 revenue generator, this is an issue that has to be addressed. So there is a plan in place as we speak in order to try and create that safe environment, firstly through awareness creation, right? And then we've been talking about how we would react to a situation once an incident has happened, but that part is easy to deal with. We have the legislative framework in place. When I say
yes,
okay, I mean if somebody wants to sort of operate effectively within the given legal framework, it can be done. But as tourism stakeholders, we would obviously embark on an intense awareness program, talking to all the key stakeholders who are engaged in promoting tourism day in, day out. So that would include the tourist drivers, to guides, to hoteliers, communities in and around where tourism is happening. So it's through that awareness creation, I personally believe that we'll be able to obviously fix this issue. If you allow for these incidents to take place in a loose environment, the number of incidents will keep rising, and how much ever strong your legal system is, that will obviously create that negative publicity for Sri Lankan tourism across the world, and that will be a major deterrent.
Speaking of the negative publicity, what exactly is the international perspective of Sri Lanka right now? We know that there's a lot of reports and videos shared on social media of all sorts of incidents, and obviously this doesn't bode well for us.
Sure.
And that information spreads faster than any other form of information. Talk to us about things like the tourism police. How effective do you think this will be?
Well, there is a separate tourism police unit that comes under the Development Authority, manned by the required number of police officers. That's there. But we have a plan to set up 22 tourism police units covering the entire country, mainly focusing on areas where tourism is number 1. And we had the first of its kind open in Mirissa just a couple of weeks ago. So that's the first one, and in fact in terms of designing all of that, we went through a learning process. So we now know what kind of model that we can replicate in other areas. So this was a design done using used containers. 2 containers landed one over the other, because in areas where tourism is happening, finding space at the right locations is a major issue. So we've basically come up with the solution that is flexible. So during this year, our intention is to try and complete 22, so that the tourist can have greater confidence in the way tourism sector is run, And for our bad luck, if an incident takes place, then obviously tourists can, go quickly, make a complaint so that the police can, take the matter over and go through the process to ensure that the justice is, delivered.
One of the incidents, if I may continue, one of the incidents that was in the news was an incident that happened in Mirissa on International Women's Day. And one of the problems that that particular victim faced was the lack of quick action from the police in that particular case. One of the statistics that was mentioned according to a UN study, it says that only 4% of incidents are reported to the police. So there is also a problem there, Mr. Gomez. Is the tourism police more approachable? Do they feel comfortable to speak to them?
In terms of building capacity and enhancing capacity of the tourism police unit, we have issues like language competency for them to be able to confidently, handle this area. So that's something that is being recognized by the respective, DIG, and there is a training program that is suggested, which will be obviously implemented, very soon. So if your question is, if we have everything in place to be able to deal with this serious issue, I would say no. While we have the initial or the basic things in place, we have a long way to go.
Professor Hettige, one of the things that you realized, well, that I realized in the week leading up to this show while reading up on this subject is that there is a lack of research done by sociologists or criminologists into sexual harassment in Sri Lanka. And really the only records or empirical data that you have to go on is what is compiled by the Sri Lanka police. And even when following that, the picture that it portrays is very depressing, because in a number of sort of sexually violent crimes that are reported to police, I think less than 5% lead to successful prosecutions, maybe prosecutions leading to a conviction. Also, another interesting statistic that crops up is that a majority of the cases, at least in the recent past that have been reported, are from the southern coast of the island. There is a equally, if not more, conservative populace along the eastern coast, which is also a tourism hotspot. But there are a few cases that are reported from there. Being a preeminent sociologist, is there an explanation that you can offer for this sort of anomaly?
Well, I already mentioned that we have a problem with social attitudes. I don't think that we have a situation in this country where this particular issue is taken very seriously by many people. That shows that people are not socialized early on, whether at home or in school or in any other institution, to really take this as a major problem that we have to deal with. I mean, this attitude that some of the police officers display, I think is indicative of the general pattern that you find in society in general. I mean, like if you really look at what happens at an institutional level in terms of incidents of sexual harassment and the way the institutions deal with those cases reported, maybe by people who have been harassed, or even by people who have really observed these things sort of happening. So I think there's a major problem here. So I don't think that we can really find quick solutions to these problems.
Professor, going beyond the sort of a generalization on attitudes of the general populace, do you see a reason for the geographical disconnect between the number of sexual harassment cases that are reported from tourist hotspots like Arugam Bay and Pasikuda and Nila Valley as compared to Mirissa and Waligama and Galle and Hikkaduwa?
No, the point is well, there's no disconnect. I think there's a connection here in the sense that, these are the places where you have a high concentration of tourists. Naturally, when you have a high concentration of tourists, you will also expect more incidents to take place in these places. I mean, if you have places where you have a few tourists, visiting, very thinly distributed, tourist population, you will naturally have much less. So I think, whenever there is a high concentration of, let's say, tourists, you would expect, more incidents to take place in these areas. But my point is that, in general, we in this society observe a high degree of tolerance of sexual harassment. I mean, it may be not very serious case of sexual harassment, like rape and so on, but various other forms of sexual harassment. I don't think that we really take some of these things very seriously. The main reason is that people have not been sensitized.
In a nutshell, what you're saying is that there is a culture of impunity.
That's exactly the point. Now, for instance, take for instance, a school is a place where you will, instill some of these values, some of these norms in children and teenagers and youth and so on. But I don't think that we are really paying much attention to, civic aspects of education. I mean, citizenship education here in this country is almost non-existent. Of course, you learn certain things, under certain subjects like, politics and, social studies.
Thank you, Professor. I'll come back to you. I want to move to Nabila. Nabila, Professor Hettige was talking about a culture of impunity, a high degree of tolerance towards sexual crimes in this country. In your work through Not Your Nangi and as an activist, how often have you encountered such incidents of impunity? Because we saw even recently with the isolated incident that Rehan called it in Mirissa, that there was a degree of insensitivity on the part of the police. There was serious questions regarding how the police handled the information of the complainant, that it may have been passed on to a friend of the accused. How often do you come across such incidents of sort of blatant impunity?
More often than I would like to admit, to be really honest. I think that, in fact, is one of the biggest problems that we have when it comes to dealing with sexual violence of all forms, may it be sexual harassment, sexual assault, rape, because we have weirdly somehow created a reaction of overlooking this as something that could be normal or something that could be ignored, or sometimes, or not rather sometimes, I'd say very often we also have victim blaming, where we pass the blame on from the perpetrator to the victim. And that creates again this sort of idea that, oh, it's okay because you asked for it, or you did this and this is why this happened to you. Much like saying like, oh, you deserved it. So I think our social attitudes towards sexual violence is one of, or rather I'd say the major contributing factor to why it's so prevalent. Because if you take an instance, I would say 95% of the stories that I receive on Not Your Nangi state of how, oh, I told my mother, but she told me to just ignore it. Or I told my dad and he told me not to make a scene out of it, because we don't want to go beyond the experience of sexual violence. We don't want to break that level of discomfort and seek something out of it for our own benefit and for the benefit of the entire nation, which is justice. So I would say it's very, very common where individuals may be victims or their family members and friends, or rather just bystanders, who tend to ignore this because they think that it's okay to ignore it, or that this is the norm, or she asked for it. If you, very recently, when I was conducting a speech, I thought maybe, I'd go through a YouTube video and read the comments to understand what the perception of locals are like. And one of the comments that really caught my attention was where this video was of a woman speaking up against what she had experienced, recording her harasser and those around her. And you couldn't see what she was wearing, you couldn't even see her face, but one of the comments said, translated to English would be, do women in Sri Lanka even dress well? Tell me. She must be a crazy eye.
Bill, on that note, now the purpose of advocacy, specifically when it comes to the kind of advocacy that you're dealing with, is to build public opinion, to change public attitudes towards issues like this. Now, you mentioned comment sections on YouTube, when it comes to comment sections on so-called like farming pages, on Facebook, several Instagram pages, now an increasing number of Twitter accounts as well. Ever since the social media sort of blackout, there have been an increasing number of Sri Lankans on Twitter with a lot to say, and more often than not, what they have to say, or the tone of what they have to say, echoes the kind of sentiments that you were talking about. What are the challenges that you face as an advocacy group when dealing with these issues that have a much more mass following, let's say, than you do? Do you feel that your advocacy is a bit too Colombo-centric to be able to take on these like farming pages with 150,000, 200,000 followers?
Well, true enough, Not Your Nangi is run entirely in English, and I am very well aware of the fact that it doesn't really reach to even, say, 20% of our entire population. It's a small population that we're reaching out to. But funnily, sexual harassment and violence are not limited to individuals who speak only Sinhala or Tamil. I've experienced this with individuals that, are dressed up in suits, and you would never imagine would be perpetrators of something so low. So the problem lies with the fact that this is so widely spread that it's not exclusive to one group alone. And even being Colombo-centric, you would assume that a city or the most urban area of a country is going to be very well developed with more open-minded attitudes and ways of dealing with individuals. But in my personal opinion, it's the same everywhere.
Do you have plans to expand the campaign or your advocacy
yes,
beyond
of course.
into rural, remote Sri Lanka?
Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
I personally think that running it only in English is not effective enough. But currently, I'm the only one running it, and my fluency lies in English, which means I could only do what I'm best at for now before expanding, and having other things on the side means that I cannot really focus on something, especially.
Rehan, quickly, because we're running out of time, I have a quick question for you. Now, we've seen, as I mentioned earlier, there's a apparent lack of sensitivity among the police as well. I swear there's a connection here. When the government introduced the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, they promised independent commissions that would bring a semblance of accountability into the system. A member of the National Police Commission at present is a prominent women's rights activist. She leads, she's not here, so I won't mention her name. She leads a prominent civil society organization that deals with domestic violence against women. But on the flip side of that, complaints about other issues with the police notwithstanding, we see this utter lack of sensitivity among police officers. Nabila mentioned incidents where, a group of schoolgirls goes to complain to a police officer about being harassed on the street, and the police officer is staring at their chests. In your engagement with the local police in Weligama, do you encounter the same lack of sensitivity?
When I first assumed duties as chairman, yes, I did find certain lapses in how they proceeded with, going about things. But then it's also very important for you to understand that even though you call them police officers and they're wearing their uniform, we're also talking about people who have been bullied when they were young, who have gone through abuse, who end up being the people who bully other people, just like what Sonali said. These are the people that grow up and then go out to jobs and they practice the same things that they learned at their homes. They practice that while they're in the uniform. But you have to understand that this is not the entire police force we're talking about. There are hundreds of, I'm not really sure how many police stations there are, but I'm sure there are hundreds of police stations around the country, right? And the level of education that most of these police officers get is not the same as a police officer in Colombo would get. Okay, the basic level of education. And not just a basic level of education, it's their awareness on how to deal with these issues. I'll give you a very good example. Very recently, I had a few tourists who came and met me, and I think Sirasa put this out and gave it a lot of publicity. A group of tourists came and met me, and they said they were walking by a temple once in Waligama. Because in the Waligama town, you get lots of temples which are in general populated areas. So these two girls were walking past in their bikinis past a temple, and there were lots of people who ended up catcalling them. A group of about 10 to 15 villagers started catcalling them. What did this girl do? She ended up going to the police station. After going to the police station, the first thing that a relevant police officer told her was in Sinhala, they said, "Hariyata andang nani, hariyata andagana nani." Or in English, if you translate it, you're not wearing appropriate clothing. Now, that itself, I would have taken the wrong way if I was a tourist. But what the tourist did was came and met me at the urban council and said, when we go to countries like Thailand, there are always infograms or billboards or little boards near temples and places of religious worship which tell people what to wear. They said, can you please put some of these hoardings up or some of these boards up so that we're aware of what to wear so that people don't catcall us. So basically what they were trying to say was that they love the country and they don't want to be catcalled, and to give them the necessary guidance on what to wear near places of worship. So I called a special council meeting and I put this into action, and I implemented a new law in the Waligama Urban Council where, in the close vicinity of public places like, temples and kovils and mosques and churches, that tourists will be, advised on what to wear. Now, the minute that this came out, lots of people started attacking me because they didn't know the background of the story. And they said, I'm trying to prevent tourists from what they're wearing. But that was not the issue. I was merely listening to what they had to say, implemented it, because if I don't implement what a tourist wants to make it more tourist-friendly for Waligama, I really don't know what proper implementation is. And that I'm going to introduce, I think, in about a week or two. And these are all things that tourists come and tell us.
Do you feel like the Urban Council should be working more closely with the police to sort of not only sensitize police officers to issues like this, but to also, be more, or let's say less tolerant of the culture of impunity that Professor Hettige and Nabila were talking about?
The thing is, if you look at the caliber of local government politicians that are in existence today, I mean, if I ask you a question and tell you how many of us local heads speak English, you couldn't even probably think of 3. I can probably think of 2. Being a journalist, you could probably think of 3. Right now, we are talking about hundreds of local government officers. So the person selected to do the job, to be in that chair, it's that person's responsibility to make sure that he leads. A leader has to lead for people to follow. So my basic involvement is that whenever I call the Minister of Tourism, who is Mr. Gomez's minister, when I speak to him and when I get advice from him about tourist matters, he tells me, deal with it as you see fit. Because he knows that I won't do anything detrimental to the tourism industry here.
Right, thank you very much. On that note, we need to go in for a short commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Face the Nation. We're discussing sexual harassment in Sri Lanka and the impact it's specifically having on the tourism sector of Sri Lanka. Not just to limit the conversation to tourism, but to specifically focus on the largeness of the issue of sexual harassment in Sri Lanka, how it has almost become normalized, how if you're a woman, you're almost expected to deal with it and move on. Our guests this evening are Nabila Yassin, Kishu Gomes, Rehan Vijayaratna Jayavikrama, and Professor Siri Hettige. We have a fantastic panel of guests. Already we have discussed the issue of victim blaming in Sri Lanka, how the legal system and its implementation oftentimes leads to double victimization, and also about sexual predators, among other issues. In this round, I'd like to first draw my attention to Nabila Yassin, who's a social activist doing some fantastic work online. Nabila, let's talk a bit about the issues faced by women as well as gay and trans persons. But firstly, I'd like to focus your attention to the fact that in Sri Lanka, according to Sri Lankan law, marital rape is not recognized. For example, it was, I think, a few decades ago that marital rape was recognized in the United Kingdom. However, in Sri Lanka, we do tend to have antiquated laws when it comes to marital rape. So if you are within a marriage and sex is forced upon you, it's still not considered an offense. So things like this and the fact that women are economically dependent upon their boyfriends, lovers, husbands, which is keeping them from maybe reporting harassment, abuse, rape. That's a huge issue in Sri Lanka as well. Talk to us about some of the instances of complaints or stories received by the platform Not Your Nangi.
I think marital rape is definitely a topic that we need to discuss widely, because if you take a look at it, if you just do a quick Google search and type marital rape in Sri Lanka, you're going to see articles dating back to 2017 and 2016 of how we're trying to criminalize this. But it's only a criminal offense if both husband and wife have been by law separated. But otherwise, it's okay, which means we are, as a nation, saying that it's okay if you're in a marriage and you have a sexual relationship with your wife where it's not consensual, which brings us to where we're objectifying women, where we're implying that, oh, women are just objects of sexual pleasure, which also brings about this whole understanding of sexual violence. But in terms of stories, I would say there have been a lot, like you said, of where girls and women have stated that they are so dependent on their partners that they can't really go about with much. But then again, this dependency has, in my personal opinion, has sprung about because we haven't really created an open pathway for women in this country to seek out and really create a sort of liberation for themselves in terms of financial liberation and independency. Because if you take a look at it again, sexual violence in all forms are restricting women. Because if you are to go to work, you can't stay over time. If you're considering work, you're constantly questioning whether the place is well of worth. And even if you're at work, you're definitely, not definitely though, you're likely to be a victim of sexual, you're likely to be victim to sexual harassment in your workplace. So all of this has sprung about, and these stories are of a wide spectrum. So it's not just of, oh, I was touched in the bus, or oh, somebody flashed me on the road. It ranges from marital rape, where they have no space for consent, to things where they're so dependent on their boyfriends, their partners, like you mentioned, that there is no way out of it, because we have created a system where it's so tight and that the pathway isn't opened up well enough.
What's your opinion on the fact that men also need to get involved in this discourse? Not just be objective bystanders, not just be people who say, oh, that's bad, really, this happened to you in the bus, you know, oh, well, you know, what do we do about it? Don't you think men need to be more involved in this process, more sensitive? How do you view this?
Definitely. I think men, women, everyone needs to really have an active stand against this, because the way I see it, right, we're a really small country. There are world maps where people have decided to just chuck off Sri Lanka because they think it's too small or too insignificant. We're a country with 20 million people only. We're really, really small. But we've also got a long, long way to go. So without the involvement of everyone here, we can't really progress, because women are a huge chunk of the workforce. We contribute so much to this country's economy, but our potential has been stifled because we're not allowed to go around freely without having our personal space violated. For instance, if you wanted to attend a particular a meeting out of your area, you're probably going to push it to your daytime schedule. You're not going to put it after work hours because you're constantly scared of how you're going to get to places. And that is an urban problem. In rural settings, sometimes they just resort to going to places that don't really give them satisfaction in terms of job satisfaction in all spheres. We're talking about income and everything. So men, women, and everybody else in this country everybody needs to take an active stand against it. Because if we are to work as a nation together, I think every step that we don't take, Sri Lanka falls back a few steps. So it is definitely a collective push.
Thank you very much for those thoughts. Certainly wishful thinking. Professor Siri Hettige, just to ensure that this conversation goes beyond rhetoric, I just need to hear your thoughts on this. What is the point of teaching our children about the Pythagoras theorem, or what the capital of Denmark is, or who was the last Sinhala king, when kids don't know basic values of respect, of human dignity? What's even the point?
Well, it's a long story about education. I think we have moved away from what we call holistic education that encompasses not just skills, knowledge, but captures wider aspects of life in a global context. So I think we have become far more instrumental. Our education system has become more and more instrumental. That is basically a means to an end. But education has to be an end in itself. I mean, the intrinsic value of education is not, what you really get by way of, literacy, qualifications and, knowledge about various things that you just mentioned. I think it has much to do. Education for life, education for living in a wider society, education for, let's say, building up, social relationships, between sexes, between, young and the old, and so on and so forth. So I think that's a big story. But I would like to go back to where we started, the tourism. I think tourism provides us with an opportunity to really draw attention to this big issue that we have been basically, not paying much attention to in this society. Because tourists, of course they come from different countries, but many tourists come from countries where you have a very high level of rights consciousness, high level of consciousness about individual freedom, and so on and so forth. I'm talking about tourists coming from liberal societies like Western Europe and so on. So the point is that they are not going to really have the same attitude towards this issue as many of us in this country, because we have taken a lot of the things for granted, and we do not really question, we do not really interrogate, we just take things lying down. But I think here we have an opportunity to really deal with the issue head on. For instance, law enforcement authorities have to deal with this issue because there is so much at stake. I mean, if you really want to maintain the image of the country, as a tourist destination, I think we need to really deal with this issue so that you basically get rid of one roadblock, if you like. But on the other hand, once you establish the norms, based on our experience in the tourist sector, we would be able to take it into other arenas. And I think basically to make it a kind of big social issue that we have to confront, as a society. So in that sense, I would consider this as a good entry point, but at the same time, we should not consider this as something confined to tourism and that we should deal with it because we are going to lose tourism and so on and so forth. I think because there is so much more at stake. And I think we need to really look at it from a broader perspective and identify institutions that can really address this issue. I don't think that it is entirely a law enforcement issue. And even if you have the best law enforcement agency, you would not be able to really address this issue unless the people who go into law enforcement agencies also have the same values, attitudes, and so on and so forth. Of course, training can make a difference, but training alone cannot make a difference. I think, and I think institutions have to deal with this. I mean, for instance, in our institutions, I mean, I know the universities, for instance, we don't really deal with this issue. We brush it under the carpet. But people get used to it, and therefore they adjust to the situation in the way that she described. Avoiding certain situations, foregoing opportunities, and so on and so forth. No, I don't think that you can brush this under the carpet, any longer. So therefore, let's use this as an entry point and to highlight the issue. And it will naturally get magnified when you have a major incident involving tourist couple or whatever, and then we should really deal with it. And I think education has a lot to do, and I think we should really see how best we could use education, to really instill some of the values that are very, very critical in dealing with these issues.
Professor, I feel that intellectuals such as yourself need to conduct lectures at places like Parliament, where our policymakers sit. I think that's something which needs to be given some thought to. Thank you very much for your perspectives. I move my attention to Mr. Kishu Gomez, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority. Mr. Gomez, according to the Lonely Planet website, here's a brief introduction to Sri Lanka. Endless beaches, timeless ruins, welcoming people, oodles of elephants, rolling surf, cheap prices, fun trains, famous tea, and flavorful food make Sri Lanka irresistible. The Daily Mirror of exactly last year says, some tourists, including a Dutch male and 2 other women tourists, were reported to have been brutally assaulted in Mirsa on Sunday morning when they resisted attempts to sexually assault the women. The group had gone to a surf bar and restaurant on the Mirsa beach where the assault had occurred. According to eyewitnesses, the group had been enjoying dinner and drinks at the surf bar and a restaurant on Saturday night when waiters at the restaurant had attempted to sexually harass women. So just to bring your attention to the massive disconnect between the rhetoric, the marketing strategy, as it were, and the reality, and the need for Sri Lanka, and especially the Tourism Development Authority and the ministry itself, to take proactive measures, not reactive measures, proactive measures to ensure that our people don't harass our tourists. So what are the measures you wish to take? I know you've very recently taken office. What are the measures that you wish to take on this issue?
Yeah, I guess a lot of things have already been said about the issue itself and what solutions lie ahead. So obviously, we need to nurture the value system, we have as a country. That comes with, education and awareness across the entire population of 21.5 million people, not just limiting to the tourism industry stakeholders only. But in respect of the question you asked, obviously, we have a plan in place in order to create greater awareness amongst all these key stakeholders to explain to them if they do not, come on board, understand the negative consequences of this, where the industry will head, and as to how it's going to affect the country's economic growth. And when Shahan, asked me that question, where he used, some numbers, tourism is the third largest revenue generator for the country. Stands at 4.5 billion, and number one being expatriate remittances, which stands at 6.5 now, and it's on the decline. If you look at the last quarter performance, compare that with this year's first quarter, I think there is about a 25% drop. So that's going down. And second being apparels, there again with competition coming from Vietnam, Bangladesh, and some of the other emerging countries, we have a huge challenge in front of us. So I guess every single Sri Lankan who's educated to an extent where he or she is able to understand the negative consequences of not dealing with this issue, in the right direction. There will be, certainly issues. So we got to, create awareness amongst the entire, population to say that, this is what the economy is going to depend on in terms of our revenue, and therefore right thing, should be done. Is it something the government can fix? Is it something the tourist police can fix? Is it something the tourism ministry, can fix? No, this is a matter where every single Sri Lankan, has a role to play. So when these incidents take place, we see social media, giving it too much publicity, sometimes amplifying the issue, taking it across the entire world. It's our own people basically demeaning our own, country and our value system. Reporting an incident the way it is, I guess nobody can, find fault with. But we know how, what is happening in respect of, social media, arena. So I'm saying it's a collective accountability of the entire nation as a whole. We all need to understand the negative consequences of it, and every single individual in the country needs to know that it is an issue that affects the economic growth of the country, and therefore that they have a role to play. And if that problem is not addressed as to how it's going to affect their quality of life, finally, country not being able to, achieve economic independence. So it's an issue that has to be dealt with, at that level, rather than, looking at it as an issue that impedes the progress of the tourism industry. I think if we take that route, then we will not be able to, fix the issue for good.
Specifically, Mr. Gomez, I'd like an answer from you in your capacity as chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority and Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau. What specific tangible measures do you wish to take in, say, the next 12 months to try and curb this issue?
So obviously it's the number of incidents that have happened in the past to number of incidents, that would happen in time to come. So that would be the scientific, comparison. And then obviously you can go deep, into it, and then try and also ascertain as to what the nature of the incident has been, all of that, to see whether we are, making good progress. So in terms of what we are doing, obviously learning from all the past incidents, that have happened, in the recent past, we are on a, intense communication campaign, talking to all our stakeholders who can do something about it. Not just them being conducting themselves in the right manner, but also educating the people in and around these tourist concentrated areas. Okay. So say, for example, the guides, working together, creating a voice, educating the people in those villages or where the tourist attractions are, just as an example, and drivers doing the same thing. So the Tourism Development Authority have programs, for all these stakeholder groups, and there is a licensing, process in place as well. These licenses have to be renewed on an annual basis. So obviously, we would, look at the performance of, each and every individual, in these different buckets. When it comes to renewal of these licenses.
And these are programs which have been in existence for.
They have been in existence, but with the numbers increasing, tourism number has increased in 2018 over 2017 by 10.2%, whereas the global growth is around 4.5. So with the numbers increasing, you got to do more. Obviously, the number of programs, have to be increased given the seriousness, of the issue that we faced with.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gomez. My final question is to Rehan Wijeyaratne Jayawikrama, Chairman of the Weligama Urban Council. Rehan, very simple set of questions for you. In Weligama, okay, first, could you just tell me who are the main stakeholders you liaise with when it comes to tourism and complaints of sexual harassment?
So basically, we liaise very closely with the Ministry of Tourism.
Right.
And Mr. Gomez's SLTDA and
Right.
Promotions Bureau.
Right.
Then we also liaise with the local police. We have to liaise with the Divisional Secretariat.
Right.
So basically, all these arms work together.
Do you think that people in Weligama, I'm just limiting it to that jurisdiction, feel comfortable enough, women especially, feel comfortable enough to go to a police station and make a complaint on sexual harassment?
Now, if you look at the amount of sexual harassment cases that actual non-tourists make, it's basically nothing.
Yeah.
It doesn't amount to anything at all, not even to basically state a percentage. That's how low it is. But there are certain ways. I wanted to use this platform today, knowing the fact that Mr. Gomez is here, to work out practical solutions that we can implement within the next 2 months.
Sure.
And one of those main things, right, is if you look at sexual harassment and when it actually happens, it happens in the night, most of the time.
Most
on tourists, most of the time. I'm not saying in entirety, but most.
But on public transport?
I'm talking about for tourists. I'm talking about just tourists. Because tourists rarely use public transportation in Weligama because we don't have trams and they rarely use it. They basically use scooters or they'll hire a scooter and get someone else to take them. And they'll do things like that, right? But if you look at the amount of incidents that actually happen in the night, it's alarming. One of the main reasons for this is that the Weligama Bay and the beach stretch is not lit up.
Right.
Okay, there's absolutely no lighting.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I suggest...
So haven't you complained to the relevant authorities, Rehan?
Okay, so basically I've had numerous chats about all this.
Right.
But when someone dynamic like Mr. Gomez takes, an initiative and he joins the tourism board, I believe that someone like him would implement these things because he's a performer.
Mr. Gomez, do you accept Rehan's proposal to you?
No, it's a great proposal given that these incidents mainly happen during night hours. So when it's dark, it basically creates that very conducive environment for these incidents to take place. But the question is, how much money do we have for us to be able to light all these tourism concentrated beaches? In fact,
I'm sure we can get a valuer.
Sorry.
We can.
Right? And I'm sure Rehan can help out with the logistics.
I mean, what Mr. Gomez, I think, meant was if you talk about the entire...
No, I comprehend.
But I mean, let's do this now and let's implement this in Weligama.
Sure.
And I will give you the 100% support you need. I will give you the logistical support you need.
No. So what I'm saying is, we have to make a policy decision as to whose responsibility that is to light a public area, right? And then the Weligama is tourism, not tourism only. I mean, you have, general public as well. So you start, something in a particular area because that, creates a precedence, and then you go to, cover the entire island. So do we have the budgets to be able to cover the entire island? Answer is pretty simple, which is known, no. So that's where we need to, I guess, at a policy level, make those right decisions. So that's a...
So at policy level, where are we?
With incidents increasing, obviously we need to engage the hierarchy.
We can't risk our tourists or our women or our men getting raped or harassed. We can't.
So the reason I mentioned Valigama is that it's a very significant bay. If you Google Valigama and if you know the amount of surfers that come into Valigama, there is no off-season, there is no on-season. One part of the bay has an on-season time, and when that goes off-season, another area opens up to the tourist. So I mean, these are strategically very important places. I'm not saying, Mr. Gomez, that we should implement this to the whole country to begin with, but if we can just identify places like Valigama, Arugambe, Trincomalee.
Mr. Gomez, I think this is a fantastic
No, definitely.
proposal that's
something we have actually discussed, but it has to be done within
in a streamlined fashion.
Streamlined and first the policy has to be put in place. And it demands a lot of investment, and I guess once the infrastructure is put in place, you can probably get the local authorities to basically maintain that. But whether we have enough funds to be able to invest in this area is the question. Whose responsibility is it to light their own areas? Is it tourism, or is it the local authority, or is it the central government? These are the issues. So all what I know is that we've not invested the monies we collect, by various taxes to light areas, right? We haven't done it. So it will be, if at all, for the first time that, we will have to do something like this. But, surely these are discussions that are taking place.
If I may suggest, Rehan, if you could, in proper manner and form, prepare a proposal and submit it to the relevant authorities and stakeholders, including the tourism authorities, I am positive that a response will be favorable.
Yep. Now, for example, the beach park, the Valigama Beach Park, which was done by the UDA, they constructed these lights right along the beach, right? But not on the beach, but on the other side of the road.
Right.
And for the past 3 years, it was not handed over to any local authority, and people in the beach started doing weights and push-ups on those light bars. But very recently, I passed a council resolution, purchased 140 lights, and we're installing them tomorrow, and that area is going to be lit up. So everything to do with lights, Mr. Gomez, it's under the particular council, and if you guys accept our proposal, because I'm sure that you're capable enough to carry my proposal to the minister. If you guys make this a pilot project, I can guarantee you that the upkeep will be done by the Valigama Urban Council.
Okay, fantastic.
Yep.
I think, Nadim, you have some questions for our guests?
Ms. Gomez, first and foremost, what kind of engagement does the Tourism Development Authority have with the Sri Lanka Police when it comes to arresting crimes of sexual harassment?
So as I said at the beginning as well, there is a separate tourism police unit that's coming under the Development Authority. There are dedicated officers who are basically managing that operation. There is a DIG in charge who overlooks the
But
operation.
that machinery is not effective.
That machinery is not effective enough, I would say. So that's why we need, more people, more, units. And I did say at the beginning that we intend having, 22 tourism police units, covering the tourism concentrated areas. And to man them, you need, trained policemen who can, manage the language as well. So these are
given by what the panelists here have been saying today, given by what Nabila has been saying and what Professor Hettige was saying about the high degree of tolerance and the culture of impunity, and given what Rehan has been saying as well about how, this is not just a problem with tourists, it's quite widespread across the country as well. What kind of training do you envision giving to these police officers at the tourism police?
Training will be given by police themselves. Training is not something that we can do. All what we can do is create awareness amongst the police officers who engaged in this, to say that this is so critical to develop the industry. highlighting the importance of, doing it right, and, giving them the resource support, all of that. In line with this tourism police unit we opened in Mirissa, there was this, what is the name used, for that, machine that runs on sand. It's a little vehicle, for lack of a better word, that runs on the beach.
Like an ATV.
ATV.
Quad bike, yeah.
Yeah, one of those ones, right? It's four-wheel. It's four-wheel. And then they're very, very costly. It's just 2 million rupees. You can buy a car for 2 million now. But this unit is, 2 million rupees. So we are actually facilitating that. And he talked about areas not being lit. But there is 24-hour patrol done by the police officers attached to the Mirissa unit. So wherever we go and replicate it, depending on whether it's off-season or season, these police officers will be deployed. Good thing is that everyone wants to do the right thing. Right from the head of state. Prime Minister is keen to develop tourism. He has his full support and commitment towards it, and in the parliament.
Thank you, Mr. Gomes. Nabila, Mr. Gomes says everyone wants to do the right thing. As a woman yourself and dealing with working in the area that you're working with, are you confident that everyone wants to do the right thing? And also, what kind of training do you think that police need?
I personally think that maybe everyone wants to do the right thing, but they don't really prioritize on it. Because if you take a look at it, I'm not saying every single Sri Lankan man is going to harass him. It's just a few bad fruits in a nice basket full of good, nice, fruity Sri Lankan men. But
thank you. Thanks, Abida.
Thank you. You guys can take it. But I think we need to first start instilling basic respect for people, which I think as a nation we lack. So it's not about respecting a woman because she's a woman, but respecting someone because you are a respectful person and because you understand that you're not entitled to another person's personal space or body. That's the problem with sexual harassment. The reason why you harass or violate somebody is because you subconsciously or sometimes even consciously think that you have that entitlement to that particular person's body or space. So I think when it comes to policemen, we need to start with educating them on basic things. And I personally don't think that every harasser was abused at a young age. Some of them had perfectly good childhood. But it's because of that education system, what they've been taught, what they saw, what they grew up seeing, what they're currently seeing, how they talk. If you take the Sri Lankan lingo, how do they refer to a woman? Badua, Kella. And the way you speak really helps you formulate your thoughts. When you refer to a woman as a Badu or a Kella, you're immediately objectifying her. You're really bringing her status down to that of an item. Badu or Kella literally translate into object.
There are also plenty of terms that are used in English and Tamil vernacular that are very similar.
Definitely, but that's the thing. I think, if you take policemen, they predominantly speak in Sinhala or Tamil. And if they're going to refer to the female population in this manner, and this is not just the entirety, it's just part of the contributing factor. So I think when it comes to training them, most importantly is you have to educate them as to where they stand on a level of, I'd say, population, where we stand on the same platform and that we don't have inequalities, where we have, where we don't teach them that, because you're a man or a boy, you can do what boys do.
Thank you, Nabila. Rehan, this is a bit of a curveball question for you. If, sexual harassment, street harassment specifically, is a very widespread problem in Sri Lanka. It's not something that is specific only to tourists. Being the chairman of a local council, of a council area that is a tourist hotspot, why is there a need for a separate tourism police? Are the Sri Lanka police incapable or is the regular police incapable of handling problems, or is it because we should give special treatment to tourists as opposed to Sri Lankan citizens?
Nadim,
Why is there a need for a special tourist police?
Nadim, I just think the basic need for it is the lack of a translator. I mean, if a tourist goes to a normal police station to lodge a complaint, is there a system in place which allows their statement to be taken in English? And if so, what's the percentage? And I can guarantee you that it's nowhere near as being even mediocre. So what we need to do is we need to identify, like I told Mr. Gomes before, we need to identify what these tourist hotspots are. We need to identify where these tourists come to. And then we need to man these police stations with people who can speak either English to begin with, forgetting all the other languages that are there. Start off with English.
Do you think that the tourist police should therefore be merged with the regular police force or the regular police service so that that learning or that experience is also shared?
If you basically, if you can't have a translator at a normal police station, put them at a tourist station.
Professor Hettige, there's something that I was getting at with that line of questioning. Do you see a linkage between social inequalities and the culture of sexual harassment that we have in Sri Lanka?
It's a difficult question. I have a feeling that the kind of education that you have has a role to play in the way that you deal with situations like this, whether as a victim or as a perpetrator. I'm talking about how conscious are the victims or potential victims about their rights, and basically we are talking about tourists because they tend to be more conscious of their rights, and they tend to seek redress when they are harassed, and I think it is very much a reflection of the background that these people come from. Now, I think a lot of the people who are harassed sexually in the public domain, maybe it is in workplaces, in buses and trains and so on, and also maybe in other public places. I think that they really don't have the same degree of assertiveness, and they tend to feel that, well, there won't be much support for them to really pursue any line of action seeking justice and fairness, and therefore they tend to either avoid such situations, or if they are subjected to, they tend to somehow take it as in a fatalistic way. Not that they are contented, not that they are accepting, but at the same time they feel rather helpless, because I think the wider environment is not very conducive for them to pursue any line of action that would really result in getting some redress. So I think it is therefore I would say that there is a degree of inequality involved here. For instance, I would say people who are weaker, people who are let's say from lower social backgrounds might probably consider this as something that they have to put up with, whereas if you come from a more privileged background, you would consider it as a very serious situation that you would certainly want to seek redress. So
Abila, do you see a correlation between social inequalities and, Professor Hettige was talking from the perspective of victims, but from the perspective of perpetrators themselves, do you see a greater willingness maybe to report when the perpetrator is from a lower socioeconomic background, as opposed to when the perpetrator is from a similar or a higher socioeconomic background?
I think this is a very common misconception that people have. I've even seen this in really, in a numerous number of comments where they say, oh, but you know, if he was in a Mercedes and if he was dressed well or if he was seemingly posh, you definitely wouldn't complain. But this is the thing, you know, if it doesn't make you feel comfortable, it doesn't make you feel comfortable. And I would say even sexual harassment in workplaces, it comes in a lot of instances, it comes from the higher authorities, it comes from their bosses, but you still feel uncomfortable, you're still reporting it. So it doesn't really, it's not a question of social class, it's a question of
but
how
is
you
it
feel
really,
about it.
that's one of the things that I'm getting at when you look at sexual harassment in workplaces.
Yes.
Many people believe that it is widespread. Again, there is a lack of sort of empirical evidence, which is one of the problems when you're dealing with sexual crimes, is that to gather that empirical data itself is very challenging. But there is a widespread belief that workplace sexual harassment is very widespread in Sri Lanka. But incidents of reporting on workplace sexual harassment, where it is a peer group, as opposed to reporting on sexual harassment where for example, a perpetrator may be viewed as inferior, there is a mismatch, let's say, in the number of reports.
Yes, I would say it really stems from the fact that when you're harassed in
So
your
there
work-
is a power dynamic here as well.
Yes, but it's not the only dynamic. I would, speaking of my own personal experience, I wasn't really harassed at work, but my friends have been. But it really stems from your want to grow your career. And here in Sri Lanka, it's so tough that even when you do report your experience of sexual harassment, it's dismissed. It's dismissed just like any other report. My own, one of my best friends, she joined one of the most reputed companies here in Sri Lanka, and in her first week of employment, she was harassed by her immediate boss, and she complained. And the response to this was, "Oh, it's okay. I'm going to train you how to deal with it better." So I think that's one of the reasons, or one of the contributing factors as to why we don't see this come out in light. On my own platform, I thought of, you know, because I personally was also ignorant to this fact. I thought, you know what, maybe it's not that bad, because I only worked in a corporate, corporate job for about 7 months, and I was lucky enough not to really experience harassment. But I posted a question saying, have you experienced harassment at work? If so, send us a DM as to how. And the response was so crazy, with your bosses coming and giving you unasked massages, your back and shoulder massages, and in a very condescending manner, where sometimes you choose to just deal with it because you want to progress in your career. And if you choose to resign, you're probably not going to get a good resignation. You're not going to get a good letter of reference. So these are different dynamics that come into play when it comes to a different social class. But I guess, you know, yeah, when it comes to complaining, there is also a bit of that privilege that comes through if the individual is from a lower social class, because you feel like, you know people who can help you out of it. But when it comes to your workplace harassment, you're trying to move up the ladder, and you're trying not to really limit your chances of progression, because you understand how bad it is here and how normalized it is.
Nadeem, I'm afraid we
point
have
I
to
was
go in
trying
for a
to
break.
highlight is that
Nadeem, we have to go
it's
in for a
not
break.
infrequent
With
at
that,
that
we
level.
go in for our final break. We'll be right back with the final round. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is the final round of Face the Nation. My final question to Rehan Wijeyaratne Jayavikrama. He's the chairman of the Waligama Urban Council, one of the tourist hotspots in Sri Lanka. Rehan, as a public representative who has a certain understanding of the severity of sexual harassment and the gravity of the problem itself, how best do you think Sri Lanka as a country can deal with this scourge of harassment of women by better engaging with its key stakeholders?
One word, awareness. For example, the Waligama Urban Council has a hall that could fit 1,500 people at any given time.
Right.
Okay. Now the SLTDA has enough resources to implement a sort of strategy where they could approach NGOs. They could be either Sri Lanka famous NGOs or they could be worldwide famous NGOs, which sort of focus on sexual abuse and sexual harassment. What you have to understand is, if I talk about Weligama, most of the, we have a huge fishing community. So these fishermen, what they do is they go early in the morning, at the crack of dawn, just before the crack of dawn, maybe 3, 4 in the morning, and they leave their wives to look after their children.
Right.
Now, the children looking at their fathers going into sea think that, oh, I don't have to study, I don't have to go to school, I don't have to do my homework. The only thing I have to do is to follow my father's footsteps.
Right.
Right? So they end up joining the fishing industry. Now, the issue there is that when the father comes back home, a majority of the time, when fishermen come back home, they come so in either a drunk, I mean, the perspective that they give to the woman is either they're drunk, or they just have a lack of respect towards women because of their uneducatedness. So they end up abusing their wives. Now the children see this, and they see their mom not going to the police station. They see their mom telling them, don't tell my mother who's living next door. And they create a sort of understanding that it's okay for these things to happen.
Fine.
But there's nothing that education can't help. So if places like the Weligama Urban Council, if they can use resources like this to invite all these people, tell them to come in and give them awareness lessons.
At this current juncture, are awareness campaigns being conducted?
No.
Not at all?
I don't know about Sri Lanka. I'm not in a position to speak about Sri Lanka, but
yes,
not in Weligama.
In Weligama.
Not in Weligama.
No awareness programs for its
nothing.
residents.
And I'm a member of the United National Party, but one thing that I won't do is I won't whitewash something when there's nothing happening.
Sure.
There's absolutely no awareness going on in these tourist attractions.
Have you written to the relevant authorities in your capacity as chairman of the Urban Council?
So I've approached a few friends of mine. I haven't really taken this to the bureaucratic level because I believe in things being practical. And I am even when I take decisions, I make them in the most practical way possible, not to harm any other stakeholder. So I have lots of friends. I have lots of friends who are women's activists. And it's interesting that you mentioned this to me, and that Nabila mentioned about the whole power core. Now, I had a very good conversation with a friend of mine. I can't mention her name because it'll be too controversial, but she belongs to a very powerful political family, right? Let me just put it that way. And I asked her, have you ever experienced this? And I expected the answer to be a resounding no. She said, of course I have. It's happened to me so many times. It's happened to me while I was going on the road. I've been catcalled while I'm going on the road. It's happened when I walked into a building once and a security guy came and felt me up. So this has really no power level to it. It happens all over, right? And if the SLTDA or the Sri Lankan Promotions Bureau could help us organize these awareness programs, and I will give...
As it's supposed to.
As it's supposed to.
It's one of the chief stakeholders.
And I will give the logistical support, and I will even give the hall free of charge, if that's what it takes. Because and one thing that I was hoping to do in these awareness programs is to also invite their mothers, their wives, and their children. So all of them can listen to what these people have to say about the right sort of steps to be taken in the event of sexual harassment taking place. So I mean, if we don't get the necessary support that we require from the SLTD and the Sri Lankan Promotions Bureau or any other government stakeholder, I mean, this is just a damn squib when we're talking about something that will actually never happen in this country.
Rehan, I think as a first step, perhaps present your proposals in writing to all these stakeholders?
Yep.
All right. So fantastic, fantastic conversation. Thank you very much, Rehan.
Thank you, Sonali.
Nabila Yassin, we saw the manner in which the Me Too movement took off, I think it was last year, almost broke the internet. Countless women across the world coming forward, speaking out on social media, talking about instances of how they have been subject to sexual harassment. And another hashtag which really went viral was, why didn't I report? So there's this fear of reporting when sexual harassment takes place. Moving forward, and since this is the final question on tonight's show from you, what stops the majority of women from reporting? That's the first part of the question. And secondly, what do we need to do to make it more of an inclusive system, in your opinion?
I think one of the main reasons why we don't report is because on a scale of sexual violence, the ones that we experience frequently are low, on the low end of the spectrum. For instance, it would be rather unreasonable, or rather, I would say it wouldn't really make sense to me to go and report every time I got harassed, because it's so often. For instance, I was walking home from work, and my house is just about 500 meters from where I work. And I chose to walk because I just wanted to see, you know, how bad was it? And while I was walking, there was a guy in a tuk. The passenger and the driver both decided it would be cool if they kind of whistled, catcalled, and made my walk back home a little uncomfortable. But I wouldn't go report that because it's trivial. But it's trivial because the scale is so big. It goes from being catcalled to rape. And if I go to the police station and say, you know, this guy whistled at me, they'd say, oh, really? You can't even take a whistle? So that part, I think, needs to be tackled via education. And we experience it so often, it would really be unreasonable to go to the police station every single time. It's really
impractical.
It's impractical, yes,
Sure.
that's the word.
Yes, and your answer to the second part of the question.
Which was...
what needs to be done to create a more inclusive culture which enables women to report?
I think firstly, support, where we support victims, where we talk about it, where we don't shun these. And I think it's amazing that right now we're in a little, where I wouldn't speak for the entire nation, I would speak for urban Colombo, where we're talking about these issues
Absolutely.
now. We're more comfortable. When I was 15, I wasn't comfortable enough to tell my mom that I was flashed right outside my house while she was just behind me. But now I think maybe 15-year-olds would feel more comfortable because we're making these conversations, we're talking about this. So I think it has a lot of measures that we can take. A, where we talk about it. B, we create awareness, because I personally believe awareness is education, and education empowers. And C, we call out. Bystander intervention is key. If you see it happening and if it's not happening to you, you can call it out, because maybe the other person isn't empowered enough to do it, because it's not easy. It's really not easy to stand up against it, even if it's just a whistle. It makes you feel so uncomfortable right down to the core. But as bystanders, we have a power because it's not happening to us. So we're not directly affected by it. So with all of these coming together, I think we need to work together as a nation, as a population, understanding that this is a problem that affects every single one of us, from the father who's worried about his daughter getting back home safely to the daughter who is the direct victim. So inclusivity would mean all of us collectively coming forth and with creating conversations and really putting an end to this victim blaming, where we think, oh, you know, if you're wearing a short skirt and a tight top, it's okay. When it's not okay, you can be in a loose abaya and you'll still be harassed. And there are countless stories of these. So it's definitely a collective effort to create inclusivity.
Thank you very much, Nabila. My final question on tonight's show is to Professor Siri Hettige. Professor, how do we get out of this mess?
Well, I mean, you know, one thing is very clear. We are dealing with a very, very big issue, and it's a pervasive, problem. It is not confined to, let's say, one particular sector like tourism. It is, so widespread. But now the question, of course, is, we are also talking about individuals who are being affected by this. Naturally, the tendency on the part of many people would be to say, look, let's take case by case basis, either through law enforcement or, through other measures. I think we probably have to, do not just one thing. We probably have to figure out, how best we could create an environment which is not supportive of this particular form of behavior on the part of perpetrators. So in that sense, there's no one thing you do. I think we have to have a multi-sectoral approach. You have to have, all the institutions to play a part. And I think much more than that is to create, not just awareness, but consciousness. People should be conscious of the problem that they see around them, and that they have a responsibility to somehow get rid of this from our society, because it is a blemish that we do not want to live with. Because, always we say that women are being harassed, and by whom? Men. So, but on the other hand, we all know that not all men are going, around and harassing women. So the point is that it is in the interest of men who are really in the majority, who are not really part of this, to really defend themselves and to safeguard their own image and interest. And the only way to do that is to basically help the institutions, especially in this case, law enforcement, to really deal with this issue, so that we will all be free of this problem that we are talking about, without really being able to find a solution. So my final point is that we should not really rely entirely on the law enforcement, but I think law enforcement certainly is a major area that we have to work on. But on the other hand, we'll have to look around and see, what other institutions can do, including, the adults in the family, for instance, to, protect their young ones being harassed, and that parents certainly would want to see that their children are not being, exposed to these, issues, when they are out, in the school.
Don't you feel that the policymakers are kind of blind to this issue just by virtue of the fact that they have a life of luxury before them and bodyguards?
I think like say when we look at other social issues, we have a lot of empirical data.
Yeah.
And we have done detailed analysis. Let's say, for instance, poverty. I mean, we have enough data, and we have analyzed this data in great detail, and that we can really, based on the data, come up with very specific recommendations. Like say, for instance, if it is poverty, we can say, well, this is how you should target your intervention. But I think in this case, we know that it is pervasive. It is a huge problem. And it is experienced by many people, but at the same time we have really not gone into empirical research, for instance. I mean, of course, one can say that, well, universities should undertake empirical research and come up with detailed data and analyze the data and indicate what is really behind this problem, and how to deal with those factors that are behind this issue. Now, I think we haven't reached that level, but I think certainly we should encourage empirical research on this issue. But of course, we can't wait till all the empirical research is done to address this issue. I think we already know that a lot can be done, and I think it should not be just on a case-by-case basis, but also creating a conducive sort of environment. And I think very minor things like let's say for illuminating dark corners in a tourist area would certainly. I mean, we know that it helps even in neighborhoods where where you have darkness. You will have more crime being committed, like burglaries and so on. So naturally, that is a very mundane thing to do. Exactly. But of course,
that's kind of common sense.
That's right. But on the other hand, there are far more important things to do. Like, for instance, basically incorporate these things in the school programs, the curriculum, and so on and so forth. So the teachers are trained, to really address this issue, in the classroom and so on.
Thank you so much. With that, we wrap up this edition of Face the Nation. It's been a 2-hour program tonight. Very interesting discourse. Thank you very much to our fantastic panel of guests. Rehan Wijeratne Jayavikrama, Chairman, Waligama Urban Council. Thank you, Rehan, for being on the show tonight. Thank you also to Nabila Yassin, founder of the Not Your Nangi platform. She's a social activist. Thank you, Nabila. Also to Professor Siri Hettige, Emeritus Professor, University of Colombo. Thank you for your perspectives. And also, thank you to Mr. Kishore Gomes, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, for his perspectives as well. Nadeem Majid and Shehan Ranatunga, thanks guys for the fantastic questions. In conclusion, there remains what seems like an impenetrable wall of silence around violence, and we must all play a role in breaking this silence. You are not a victim for sharing your story, you're a survivor, setting the world on fire with your truth. And you never know who needs your light, your warmth, and raging courage. Thank you for being with us on tonight's show. Good night.